The Beginner's Guide to Intuitive Eating. New to intuitive eating but want to learn more? Our Beginner's Guide to Intuitive Eating walks you through the 10 principles, the research, benefits, common myths and misconceptions, and how to get started on your own journey to healing your relationship with food. This blog post was written by 𝙑𝙤𝙖𝙥𝙩𝙚 from Mississippi, Road, and 𝙑𝙤𝙖𝙙𝙚𝙧 Nutrition. Alex completed her master's in clinical nutrition at NYU. Alex is passionate about helping others find a more positive and peaceful relationship with food and body via intuitive eating. She feels strongly that there is no single image of health and that diets do not work. Alex specializes in intuitive eating, eating disorders, and disordered eating, and body image works.
What is intuitive eating? Intuitive eating, is an evidence-based health approach created in 1995 by two dietitians, Elise Reese and 𝙑𝙤𝙙𝙚𝙧. If you take anything away from this guide, let it be that intuitive eating is not a diet. In fact, it is often referred to as anti-diet. No foods are off limits. There are no rules on when, what, or how much to eat. A non-diet, or anti-diet, approach takes the focus away from judging success based on a number on the scale and places it on behaviors that promote health. At its core, intuitive eating involves going back to the way we were naturally born to eat. When we were young, we ate when hungry and stopped when full, something we innately felt by listening to our body's cues. We were not born measuring portions, tracking macros, or counting calories, and we did not pay attention to any external forces telling us what we should or shouldn't do to be healthy, or thin, as diet culture would have it. The need to eat, or stop eating, was fully intuitive. Finding a way back to those internal cues is a large part of the intuitive eating practice. As a non-diet approach, intuitive eating involves meeting both physical and psychological needs, because mental health is equally important, and only you know what you need at any given time. You are the expert of your own body. For Reese and 𝙑𝙑𝙧𝙧, intuitive eating is an empowerment tool, one you can use to escape from the dieting cycle and weight obsession, to learn what it means and how it feels to truly be in touch with your body and heal your relationship with food. If this sounds overwhelming, complicated, or simply not possible, that's okay. Intuitive eating is a practice. It takes time to break down all the diet rules and emotions you may want to hold on to. Think about how long you've been dieting for or struggling with your relationship with food. You didn't adopt these behaviors overnight, and so the healing process of eating doesn't happen overnight either. That's why Reese and 𝙑𝙑𝙧𝙧 created the 10 principles of intuitive eating, which are meant to guide you through recognizing and rejecting diet culture, to coping with emotional eating, to incorporating gentle nutrition, and more. We'll take a look at those principles in depth later in this post.
What are the benefits of intuitive eating? There are over 100 research studies, and more ongoing, that look at the benefits of intuitive eating. Positive health benefits with significant association include lower total cholesterol and LDL, lower triglycerides, increased HDL, high self-esteem, improved body image, more satisfaction with life, increased well-being, lower rates of disordered eating and eating disorders.
Why is intuitive eating popular? Let's begin with a brief description of diet culture. Even if you're not on a specific diet, it does not mean you aren't tied up in the diet culture world. It's easy to get lost in this system of beliefs, lost in the idea that thin equals healthy, that weight loss grants you higher status in the world, that certain ways of eating are bad and others are good, and that it's okay to stigmatize those who don't match one picture of health. Yes, that's a big sentence, yet it's still hard to recognize all the insidious ways that diet culture sneaks into our lives. Recently, more research around the harms of dieting and intentional weight loss have reached the mainstream. It's been shown that weight cycling, losing weight and gaining it back, has a higher risk of death than maintaining a higher weight. And those with an overweight BMI, the BMI is a story for another time, have the lowest risk of death and chronic disease across all BMIs. Lastly, research shows that weight stigma can actually cause more harm than simply being in a larger body. So, why do we still diet? Why do we still covet thin bodies and stigmatize others? Diet culture. Here's the thing, apart from the harm caused, the bigger picture is this: diets don't work. You might say, hey, but I've lost weight on a diet, and that is probably true. However, it's also probably true that you weren't able to keep the weight off. So, did the diet really work? No. The research overwhelmingly supports the fact that diets are not sustainable. Research also shows that 2/3 of dieters regain more weight than they lost on the diet. And any health benefits achieved in the short term are equally not long-lasting. In fact, as noted above, diets can actually cause negative health outcomes. It's likely you've dieted before, or tried a diet in disguise like a lifestyle program, maybe even tried a number of different diets. As I mentioned above, it's also likely you lost weight. But the diet was so difficult to sustain that you stopped following it, gained the weight back, and maybe developed some disordered eating habits along the way. After a little break, you thought maybe a different diet would be better, and you start the process again. This is called yo-yo dieting, in which you are consistently going on and off diets, often resulting in weight cycling, aka losing and regaining weight over and over, which can be detrimental to both physical and mental health.
Dieting also typically involves intense restrictions, often on both the amount you eat and the types of food you eat. When we don't get enough calories, the brain releases a chemical called neuropeptide Y, NPY, which makes you crave carbs. So, after a period of restricting, our survival mechanism kicks in, triggering a binge. Clinically, a binge means eating, in a discrete period of time, an amount of food that is definitely larger than what most people would eat in a similar period of time under similar circumstances. There is also typically a feeling of loss of control associated. Afterwards, you might feel extreme guilt and shame, and vow to do better, aka restrict better, the next day. This is the binge-restrict cycle, which many dieters, and non-dieters struggle with. At this point, many feel they've hit diet rock bottom and can't take it anymore. This is where intuitive eating comes into play. Intuitive eating is a solution to escape yo-yo dieting, weight cycling, and the binge-restrict cycle. In fact, the first principle of intuitive eating is to reject diet culture, to reject the idea that the next diet will be successful, and to reject that weight is the end-all be-all of health. E is the counter to the damaging and stressful behaviors dieting demands. Instead, E helps you get back to how you were born to eat, to listen to your body, to let go of the external rules, and to find lasting peace with food.
Who can try intuitive eating? Any human with a body can try intuitive eating. Seriously. There are no qualifying factors or prerequisites to fulfill in order to fit the E-bill. You don't have to have an issue with dieting or weight loss or struggle with various disordered eating habits. If you do suffer from a diagnosed eating disorder, though, working with an eating disorder dietitian who is also trained in intuitive eating can be very helpful. If you have food allergies, dietary restrictions, or medical conditions, they can be honored and held within the E-framework. I've previously covered 2 specific questions I receive on this topic on my blog. 1. Can athletes practice intuitive eating? The answer, yes. 2. Can intuitive eating concepts work for someone with IBS? The answer, also yes.